Afternoon, everyone. This is the South End Water Main monthly virtual meeting for the month of June. This meeting will be recorded and posted on our website, so you can access it at any time. Will's going to get started here in just a minute. Just as a reminder, we are hoping to do question and answers at the end of this meeting, but if you do have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll address those at the end. Thank you.
Are we good? Should I go? Okay, so South End Water Main Swim virtual meeting. Katie just said the date and time, so we're good there. And she's going to be controlling and moderating the session. And if you miss it, or I guess if you, once you watch this one, if you want to go back and watch all the past ones, you can as well. Visit our website, charlotteswim.com. And then if you don't necessarily want to tune into these, but you do want to be aware of what's going on, then you can text South End Water to this 31996 number, and we will send alerts for upcoming project meetings, but also, whenever something major happens on the project, whether it be a setback or a success, we often will send out information via that text alert system. So feel free to sign up. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about safety. So safety minute, here's a picture of a car crash that recently happened. And actually, I think it was a week or two after this specific car crash had happened, that power pole in the background also got hit by a car. So, we've got lots of construction signage up and lots of cones and lots of protective barriers to keep our workers safe. But regardless, this is just an area that requires a little extra attention. So please try and pay as much attention as possible when you're driving in through this area. There's only one lane open in both directions. And that lane sometimes goes left or goes right slightly. So you just need to make sure that you're always paying attention. A lot of cars coming out of the zone, and there's potential for accidents. I mean, we're having fewer accidents this year than we did last year, same time frame. So things are good, but there's always still just a lot going on in South End. So just try to be extra careful when you're driving in and around our construction site. We want to keep our workers safe. Construction is a dangerous job. Construction in the work zone is, in the heavy traffic area is even more dangerous. So we want to just pay extra special attention. This probably will be a recurring thing that I talk about each month. Please, 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 please pay attention when you're driving through this area. Communication-wise, contact-wise, if you want to get in touch with me, my name is Will. That's my phone number and my email address, so feel free to reach out. If you'd rather, reach a broader audience, then go ahead and email that info@charlotteswim.com if you have a more complicated question, and we can write back, make sure that our response encompasses everything. And then lastly, if you're a business owner or someone in the area and there's an issue with construction and you need to get in touch with someone ASAP, Keith Hunter is our Black and Beach construction inspector, and he's the one you're going to want to go ahead and contact. His email and phone number are over there on the right. Real quick, what we're going to talk about today, the agenda. Just going to review the schedule and how things are progressing. I'm going to talk about traffic detours, alternative routes, and then the bulk of this presentation, as usual, is just going to be about what construction activities are taking place and how we are building things and how it all works. And then there'll be some little Q&A, a little bit more advertising for getting in touch and staying in touch at the very end. Real quick, we are in phase 5 currently. If you've been following along, then you're aware that we moved to phase 5, I think 3 to 4 weeks ago. And we're going to, be working in phase 5 probably through early September, late August. That's the time frame. It was originally, 14-week plan. Started in late May, and so that puts us into the August-September time frame when we'll be actually sort of making this final connection and restoring the street. Right now, we're of course laying the pipe. I had a bullet there I must delete it earlier today, but yeah, you can go out there now and you can stand on the sidewalk and you can see that we've done cutting into the street. We have a big trench there, and now we're laying the pipe and moving northward and adding valves, etc. as we move north. I believe we're just north of Chick-fil-A at this point, and putting pipe today specifically. Once we get done with all that, we'll move to phase 6, which will be just past just past the Elmhurst Road and then up to the Remount Road, and that'll be a September start time frame. I do have an asterisk there for phase 5. We're looking at the possibility of working pretty closely with CDOT. You know, we're seeing more and more business impacts as we move north. And so we're discussing with CDOT the possibilities of maybe finishing some earlier parts of phase 5 and going ahead and attempting to move some of our traffic control to make things a little bit better. But you know, don't hold your breath on that. There's still a lot of variables. You know, what causes delay. Hitting unmarked utilities can also cause delay, and then, you know, CDOT sort of has to also make sure that we're doing everything that's safe and okay for their street, which they, you know, it's their business to manage and run. So just putting that out there. There's a possibility of some good news in the future, but in the meantime, you know, just plan on late August, early September. Phasing, here's sort of more of an overview of what this phase 5 looks like. We are just past the Greystone intersection, and we are up, down. If you go north, we are past Elmhurst as well. So that's what we're calling phase 5. But if you look at this map here I have on the screen, this is the phase 6 line right here, with a little bit of overlap. And of course, the difference between the two phases you see is not the same line. There's typically a large 24-inch valve there, and we build up to that valve. And we're able to sort of isolate that line and put the new line in and put the old line in service. And that's sort of what the phasing is based on. It's based on what intersections are where, how do we keep from closing too many of those intersections at the same time, and how do we have the big 24-inch valve that allows us to activate, isolate, and sort of move on. Real quick, traffic detours, alternative routes. So this will be posted as well. You can come back and read a little bit more. I mean, the crux of it is, if you are northbound on South Boulevard, then you'll be able to access Marsh Road and Elmhurst Road right now. You will not be able to turn left onto Newbern. Marsh Road turns into Newbern. You can't turn left onto Newbern if you're northbound. And if you're southbound, it's sort of the opposite, right? You'll have access to Newbern, but you won't have access to Marsh, and then you won't have access to Elmhurst. So, you know, if you're wanting to go on Elmhurst, you really need to be going northbound. And if you want to get onto Newbern somehow, or to go west of the project in the corridor, then you have to be going southbound. That's basically the crux of it. We did find a problem with our detour. We had a detour set up for the neighborhoods on the west side to get around the whole Marsh Newbern barrier wall. The original detour was putting people out on Hartford, and I received a phone call, and thank you to the public person that called me to let me know that indeed, when you come out on Hartford, it was not possible to turn right and then make the immediate U-turn at the QT because there was a small little bit of median there. So we've since made that fix. So now it'll bring you out to Hollis, and you'll then be able to turn right to go northbound and then make the U-turn there at the QT or the U-turn there at Clanton. That's what the correction is for that detour. Okay, now jumping into, you know, the bulk of the presentation, we're just sort of talking about what we're doing and how we're doing it. If you look back, one of our very first meetings, I think maybe phase 2, phase 3 meeting, we talked about having some issues with how we were going to be connecting side services, and we made a change to include these T connections. So this is actually a big piece of T pipe with a much larger side connection and a valve there. And so this is how we are installing the side connections to better enable development. You know, we know that this construction is pretty disruptive, so I'm trying to make it so that in the future there won't have to be any extra road closures for development to happen. We think that there's going to be, you know, multi-story development, anything that's single story on South Boulevard right now. So we're installing this capability to have that development happen a little bit better without as much disruption. So all the development can happen off of the road without any future Charlotte water work needed in South Boulevard. So we're putting in these much larger lines. Here's a 12-inch line. In this picture over here, we have actually an 8-inch line. And so that way, to make this connection, for example, in the future, the developer can just come over there and not have to be in the road, and Charlotte Water won't have to go back out in the road and make a new large connection for new development. So that's where that stands. Okay, I mentioned buried utilities earlier. Typically we call 811 before we dig, as everyone should, and Piedmont will come out, Duke will come out, any kind of communications companies will come out and they put those markings on the pavement. You've seen the spray paint, many different colors. Each different color represents a different kind of buried utility. And so then once we know where the buried utilities are, oftentimes we'll go do soft digs. We've mentioned that a bunch on previous meetings. We'll do soft digs to go and gently actually do an excavation to really confirm that that's where the utility is, so that we're on the same page. We're doing extra due diligence. Even with all that, sometimes utilities don't get marked, and then we may hit them, and that causes problems. But if all goes well and we don't hit the utilities, oftentimes we still have to figure out how to put a fairly large ductile iron pipe down into a trench that we've excavated, and we have to get it around existing stuff. So here you can see two things that were going across the trench, and this pipe had to get sort of lowered down in there and then slid up under there and then filled back in and compacted, and all that work has to take place with those utilities still in place and existing. So it's a tricky process, and it accounts for the speed at which we move at. So, and especially as we get further north, there's more and more stuff that we have to sort of dodge. So that's that's why things seem to be, people wonder why things take so long. That's why. This is what it looks like. So once that pipe is fully down the ground, and so you can see there's a little tiny valve here. If you look closer to the tiny valve, it's gonna open or close the water that's gonna come off the side of that pipe. Here's what that kind of valve would look like once it's buried and it's upright. And you can see we have this big long piece of connection rod, valve stem, that will actually come up to the surface of the ground, and that will allow, should we need to close off or do something with that service line, we can go out there in the street and quickly open and close that valve without having to do any kind of excavation. It's basically just it's a long key that goes down there to that valve that allows us to open and close that valve, even though that valve is buried deep in the ground. So this is what it looks like. It's usually called valve boxes. So after we have buried that valve and we'll have that long tube that goes down to the actual actuator. We have these boxes go up at street level. You may have seen these sometimes. Sometimes the people will pull the lids off for some reason. I don't know why, but if you ever see one of these lids sort of laying around and you see a little small open hole that's 4 or 5 inches diameter, feel free to put that valve cover back in there. It'll help protect that valve stem. It'll help protect the valve itself, so we won't have to break anything. But we eventually backfill all around the pipe. This is sort of a side connection, right? So there's actually a pipe that runs from our construction site up under this open lane of traffic over to here. And you can see he's using the vibrating compactor, going compacting around these valve boxes and everything before we do final pavement restoration. Back to sort of, okay, we found the utility, but how do you dig around that utility? And oftentimes it's by hand. We know where the utility is. You can see here that they use the excavator to make big scrapes and remove large amounts of material. But once we get really close to those other gas lines, other water lines, other sewer lines, or other communication stuff, the contractor literally goes down in there with shovels and they hand excavate around this stuff to make sure it's protected and it's safe, so that we're not breaking anything, we're not having to incur any extra work, and that all these utilities can coexist, unfortunately, essentially in the same location. What about the old water line? That's a question that comes up, what happens to it? And so what we do is we do what's called an abandonment of the old water line, and there's a couple different ways you can do abandonment. We've opted for the way that's going to be the least impactful. So rather than trying to go into that existing open lane of traffic, which is where the old water line is, and close it and actually dig up the old pipe and throw it in a dumpster, we're pumping flowable fill, which is sort of concrete type material, into that pipe. And so you may have seen in the sections of road that we were sort of done doing our work in, we had some temporary lane closures last week and week before, and this is what it was. We're basically we're replacing the water in the old line with concrete, so that it's the road won't have any impacts, and no one will attempt to put water in there. And if anyone ever digs into that water line, it's full of concrete, so it's understood that that's no longer a water line. So this is how the abandonment process takes. it's the least disruptive way to do that. And again, we're just pumping concrete into the old water line and leaving it in place. We, of course, remove all the old fire hydrants and all the old valve boxes and stuff as well, so there's never any confusion about what's active and what's not. Okay, we mentioned earlier that we're putting in new water lines that go underneath the existing lane of traffic, and so a question comes up, well, how are you closing the one lane of traffic, but you're not closing the second lane of traffic? And we recognize that would be extremely disruptive in the South End area, and to have a full block or a full road closure is just not something that we wanted to try to do. It's not something CDOT wanted us to do, and really no one wanted to do that. So what we end up doing is we end up doing this sort of horizontal drilling, for lack of a better term, or tunnel boring, or however you want to term it. But basically, we dig a pit, we put a trench box in there. You see those three guys are all inside a trench box, so they're being safe. And then they go ahead and lower this contraption down. It's on rails, and they can add sections of auger drill, and they drill a connection over to the existing line that we just put in, or to the new line. And sometimes we drill from the middle out to the outer edge. But either way, that outer lane of traffic is to stay open while we essentially make a little small tunnel between the work site and the shoulder. So that way all the traffic can still stay open, at least to one lane. I think that was my last slide. Question that I see John's on. Hello, John. And he had a question about the traffic signal at South Boulevard. So my last conversation with CDOT was that they're up against a problem with being able to maintain pedestrian crossing there at Marsh Newbern. That was sort of one of the imperatives. If you look over there, you'll see there's a gap in the barrier wall so that pedestrians, and especially, sort of ADA handicap accessibility, the crosswalks need to all still be maintained. So that traffic signal has to sort of balance the pedestrian request to cross the street along with the regular traffic to go straight, and then occasionally traffic turning right. So that's why it's not just staying green constantly. I am still, I'm talking with CDOT, see if there's any better way around that, especially, that issue might get worse as we go north, but right now they're stuck up against sort of their operating procedure, which is that pedestrians still need to be able to get across there, and then cars need to turn right as well. So, but I'll definitely keep you up to speed on that if anything changes. I drive through this construction site every time I'm going anywhere, so yeah, I do recognize that getting stuck sitting at that red light is especially frustrating, especially when there's no other cars turning right. There's sometimes pedestrians come up and push that button, and then they cross anyway, and then they're gone by the time the light turns red. And you're like, well, why is it turning red? And it's so, yep, I hear you on that. I don't see any other questions. So again, repeat information. If you want to send a question to the entire project team, that info@charlotteswim.com domain is the best one to use. The charlotteswim.com website is up and active, and it's quite a beautiful website. So I could be biased, but please visit that website, and you can get all the information. You can get all the past episodes of this wonderful construction update show that we're putting together here. And then South End Water, text that to 31996, and that will keep you abreast of all the information and everything going on with this project. I think I have one more slide here, contacts and logos. So that's pretty much it. Katie, do you see any other things in the questions or the chat? I'm just
Looks like we don't
Q&A.
have any other questions at this time. If anyone had anything to ask, this would be a great time. Otherwise, like Will mentioned, the team is always available for questions, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.